What's up, my friend? Welcome to the Finding Direction podcast. My name is Stu Massengill, and I'm here every single week to bring you a passionate guest or message dedicated to helping you find your purpose so that you can live a life full of passion, fulfillment, and happiness. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for hanging out with me, and let's dive in. Welcome back to the Finding Direction podcast. This week I'm sitting down with Meka Mo, and a little bit about Meka Mo. By day, she works for a philanthropy company as an employee, and by night, she is going out doing stand-up comedy and living just a beautifully, beautifully balanced life. And in this episode, some of the things we're going to dive into is how do you balance a passionate 9-to-5 with an entrepreneur hustle, right? It's a unique blend that you need to find for yourself, and Meka Mo dives into all of that. We also talk about what putting in the work to find your purpose in your next step looks like. It's a really, really beautiful discussion. And we also talk about how Meka Mo accidentally stumbled into stand-up comedy, what she's doing today, what she's most passionate about, what she's doing extraordinarily well, and it literally came by accident. So there is so much goodness in this episode. I am so excited for you to hear all of our conversation. And if you're not yet, please make sure you subscribe so we can come back every single week and hang out together. And other than that, we're going to dive right into the episode, and I hope you enjoy. Meka Mo, welcome to the show. I'm excited for you to be here.
I'm happy to be here, Stu. How are you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal. Thanks so much for asking. And so, as we kick this thing off, I would love for you to give our listener just a little bit of an inside look as far as basically who's Meka Mo, what do you do, and just, fill us in a little bit on who you are.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm a comedian out of Queens, New York. I'm from Astoria, Queens. I started doing comedy a couple years ago, and it just kind of stuck. I started doing it by accident. I was looking to do more writing and took a comedy stand-up writing class, and basically have been hustling around ever since in this scene, trying to make people laugh here and around the country. Yeah.
I love it. That's a good job, right? Making people laugh.
Yeah.
But a difficult job. I have a friend that did stand-up comedy for a while, and I do a lot of public speaking myself, but I don't like saying I couldn't do something. So I think I could figure it out eventually, but stand-up comedy is I think it's one of the hardest things to ever do, right? So you're literally getting in front of the stage, taking off your clothes and going, hey, everybody, here's what's going on. Do you like it or not?
Yeah, so that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And it's hard if you're not funny. Wait.
For real. Yeah, you definitely have to be funny. And so there's so much juice I want to pull out of that, but I'm curious if we go back into your story for a little bit. Can you fill us in a little bit as far as the first time you sort of stepped into the real world, right? You graduate, you're starting to go into the professional chapter of your life. And what did that sort of first chapter look like? Because I'm guessing, and from the research I've done, you didn't just graduate and say, okay, I'm just going to become a stand-up comedian. There's other twists and turns before. So fill us in a little bit on kind of what life first looked like in your professional career.
Like I said, stand-up was more of an accident. I started stand-up comedy late in life. Some people start when they're a freshman in college. That was not my story at all. I was a poli-sci major. I went to go work in nonprofit for a little bit and traveled around for a little bit earlier in my career. I thought I would be a teacher, so I worked in India. I worked in Ecuador, all these random places.
Dang.
Ended up at a charter school at in Harlem Children's Zone. Shout out to them, love them. But it's weird because my journey is kind of weird in the sense that I graduated in a peculiar time period. I'm a millennial, so earlier on in our careers, we graduated into just not the best job market, as you can imagine. So a lot of us were, going to work abroad, trying to figure it out. And the nonprofit I was working for actually lost a lot of money and things like that. So we had to cut back on programs. And so I actually worked in finance for a little bit, actually. That's a part of my story I don't really tell.
So what was your first job then as you went into the real world? Was it going to Ecuador and going to some of those other
So
countries?
my first job was, so my first, like, it's weird because it was like an internship, but it was like going to India and working there.
Huh.
And then like my first like non-internship job was working at Harlem Children's Zone. Yeah.
Interesting. And so what did you do when you went to India? Like what was the you
Oh
yeah.
yeah. So I was working with children. So I taught like, it was weird. I was teaching American culture, but like, what is American culture? So
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of Grease dances, like dance from the musical Grease, and talking about like what we eat for dinner, what time we eat dinner, like things like that.
Interesting.
Literally just traveling around India because I worked for a school that had like 90 different branches around the country, and I ran around talking about like what is American culture, and basically it was just my observations, like talking about in India because they eat really late there, and we eat like dinner really early. Like they'll eat dinner
Right.
like super duper late. I'm just like, this is weird. We eat dinner at 6. Like I was probably starting a comedy set for the children, but they enjoyed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
They enjoyed it. And then I wanted to do that back here in New York City. So
Okay.
that's why I went to go work
When you
at
went
the charter school,
to
not
Harlem.
teaching culture, but like a lot of like after school programming, things like that for the kids. But that's when I
Okay.
realized I actually do not want to work with children. Actually, they're mean. So no, thank you.
Yeah, you have to be a brave soul to work with little children all day, every day. Um, so
Yeah.
shout out to all the teachers and
Yes.
everybody that's doing that, right?
I
And
was not
so
cut out.
yeah, so you went to Harlem, and it sounds like that's sort of when you had this realization of like, okay, this all sounded great, but children are not as fun as I thought they would be to work with, or it wasn't right for you, right? It's for someone else. It's, oh my God, this is perfect for you. It wasn't a thing. So what took you from there to go and all of a sudden, okay, I'm going to be, with children teaching, to all of a sudden I'm going to go to finance? Like it seems like a
Um,
pretty left
that is
field
very drastic. I
move.
think what's so funny. I was actually like going to join the Peace Corps, and I remember I was like hanging out with. I had some friends. They were older, like how people try to mentor folks, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Join the Peace Corps. You need to go make some money." Like, like what are
Yeah.
you doing? Like, there's no money being made in any of
Yeah.
these.
Peace Corps, you don't make
So
any money.
so they thought, but actually, I think they were wrong looking back at it. But it's like, okay, I'll go make some money. So I like just started, actually, I started temping around various jobs here in New York City, like financial institutions,
Huh.
mostly compliance departments because I was a poli sci major. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But then like I randomly ended up on a trading floor, and for some odd reason, like that energy fit my energy. It's like very like aggressive. Everyone's pissed off, cursing. Like I was like, this
Yeah.
is exciting.
It's like classic Wall Street in the movie,
The
right? People are,
classic, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And it was just like my boss was horrible. Like, but for some, I had to work the horrible hours. But for some, I was really into it. I don't know why.
Huh. And so what eventually took you from loving that to your next chapter?
So that's the thing. It was weird because I actually stayed in financial like about 3 years, but I knew I wasn't supposed to stay there. It was almost like I was a visitor, if that makes any
Interesting.
sense. I
Yeah,
was kind of
totally.
like there in the moment, like maybe thought about it, but the more I dig deeper, I was like, I don't care about money or these rich people. They're like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, I want to help people. That's my why. And actually, when I was on the trading floor, I had to do like, what is my why? Like kind of thing. I was really big on that. So it came back to helping people or impacting people. Like I'm a people person. So granted, we worked with people, I guess, at the job I had. It was like a sales role more, but
Okay.
it wasn't the kind of how I wanted to work with people, not in that capacity. I needed to be contributing to society in a more impactful way. That was just like, so I had to figure, I did a lot of like, what color is your parachute?
Yeah.
Random
Soul
people,
searching.
life coaching. I did a lot
Yeah.
of that to figure it out.
I love it. And I think it's such a beautiful thing for anyone listening to this to take, right? It's like as you're sort of figuring out what it is that you want to do and you're going through that process, asking yourself and getting clear on your why, right? It's like why are you doing this? And so I'm curious for you, could you share with our listener, like, what was sort of the process you went through to find your why, and how can somebody else listening to this kind of use that to take a moment and sit down and go, okay, maybe you did what colors your parachute, maybe you got a life coach, but Meka Mo, I need some life coaching from you right now, and I need to figure out my why. So how did you go through that, and how else could we help our listener go through that?
Yeah, it was such a draining experience, I would say. Like, it was not straightforward at all. And also I will say the biggest advice is not something that happens overnight. It's almost like you do all these different things and you kind of come to this realization at the end of it. I'm the type of person, like, I really need to dig, like, to get to the bottom of something. So like, yeah, so I actually went to the first, like, it was weird. I first I felt like I was having like some pain in my stomach, like, just from working at the trading floor. Like, I wasn't feeling 100% healthy, if that makes any sense. So there was an indication, like, in my body, I feel like, that this wasn't like necessarily like a long-term like place for me. So I went to go see a spiritual nutritionist, which which kicked me off of my journey. So I went to go see the spiritual nutritionist. So weird. I don't know. It was really hooky and fun. Like, basically, and because I had extra money to burn working on Wall Street, so I paid this guy. He like told me like different things you can eat, like health remedies, everything very like holistic. And then we had like these talking sessions about like what makes you real happy, blah, 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 and like stuff like that. And then, like, I don't know, I felt like he wasn't deep enough. So I was like, I don't really care what he has to say. So after a while, I stopped seeing him, and then I was still looking. I met this, like, a woman that was doing like this. She was like launching like this like circle, like, life coaching business, but it was around this philosophy, this holistic health philosophy, like a whole picture of your whole life kind of thing.
Yeah. Love that.
So like, what pieces of your life are you most happy in, blah blah blah. And but it was good. I saw that spiritual nutritionist, so they got me on that journey. And then I did this workshop with like these women. It was like 10 of us for a couple of weeks. And like, it was weird because at the time, remember, spiritual nutritionist, I was really hyped up, like, I want to do more fitness, more exercise stuff. And this other girl, she like wanted to be more outspoken. I don't know. Everyone had their thing, but she was like she was really good at working out, and I was really good at speaking. So we like coached each other on that stuff. Right. So I kind of coupled that with like, at work, scrolling on the internet, like, what do I really want to do? Like, what sparks my mind? Like, what sparks my attention? And it kept on going back to like, I want to help people. I love the nonprofit sector. I love when I was able to like impact things directly. I love like social entrepreneurship and like impact investing. I just like love like these things that are creative, providing solutions for society. And I want to be a part of that. So I kind of kept on coming back to that in the back of my mind. It just felt right.
Love it. And I think it's a great reminder for, you know, the listener right now, is it's like, as you go throughout this process of figuring out what it is you want to do with your life and sort of getting to a place of being fulfilled in your work, also having some passion there, right? Having some happiness in your day-to-day life, to get to that place, like, it takes work, right? It's not like, oh, I'm not really sure what I want to do with my life. And all of a sudden you snap your fingers and it's like, oh my God, everything's worked out, right? It's like, if you really do want to, you know, live a life like that, you have to put in the time, the effort, the energy, the sweat. And I think the reality is that's probably a reason why the majority of the world, unfortunately, doesn't live in a place where they're fulfilled, where they're passionate, where they're excited every single day about what they do, because a lot of people don't want to put in the work. Right. But the reality is, it's like, you're going to put in the work one way or the other. One way you put in the work, you learn about yourself, you invest in yourself, you maybe, you know, become part of some of these things that you were talking about. And after you put in all that work on yourself, you actually find yourself doing something you love, versus the other work you do is you go, I don't want to do all that work. It's too much. And then the work you do ends up being work that you really don't like. And then that can slowly be, you know, like a vicious cycle where it's like, for a year, you're like, I don't really love this. And then, you know, you go, I'll figure it out eventually. And then 2 years, it goes to that. And then, you know, eventually you're like, damn, I've been doing this thing for 10 years and I'm miserable. So I think it's a good reminder for anyone listening to this right now to be like, all right, if you're really serious about figuring out your life and getting clear and like really living an intentional, purposeful, a fulfilled life, it's time to put your actions where your words are, right? And do something about it. And so from all those things that you went through, and it sounds like it was, a roller coaster in a sense, right? Where you're like spiritual health, like, yeah, this sure, like I need to do something. And you're like, what the hell is this? And then it's like, you find this other woman, and it was kind of this beautiful, like, miniature roller coaster you went about finding yourself and getting clear on what you really wanted. And I'm curious, from all those different experiences you went through, what would you say was the biggest lesson that you took from all those different things?
What was the biggest lesson? I guess like be open to opportunities and new experiences. I think there's something you grow from being uncomfortable, honestly. And so like trying
Amen.
new things that you haven't done before and like learning some skills. It's like there's growth in the uncomfortness of it all. There's growth in the failing of it all.
Yeah.
Even with the spiritual nutritionist, I was like, I don't care about this hokey pokey bullshit. But like I had to learn that, right? So
Yeah.
it's just like all you just have to learn what, you just have to go through the
True.
process. Yeah.
And also, and I think it's totally in alignment with what you're saying. It's like being willing to have this beginner mentality, right?
Yeah.
And not be like, well, I've been doing this thing for, a couple of years and I don't love it, but like, I don't want to start over. I don't want to go, be someone that doesn't really know much in this space. But the reality is like, if you're willing to be a beginner, if you're willing to sort of have that mentality, one, you grow an insane amount, and two, it can lead you to the right thing, right? That is in alignment.
Most definitely.
So a lot of cool stuff. So I'm curious. So you're going through this, you're finding yourself, you're figuring it out. And where did you kind of go after all of that? So you told us about, you had clarity, you kept being pulled to this one direction. And so what was the way that you sort of took all these realizations about yourself and like made a decision in your life?
Yeah, so it was interesting because for me, it was like mostly centered around my job. What I did learn even throughout this process was like the financial environment wasn't healthy for me. It wasn't feeling like my why, my purpose. So I have to figure out like what I actually wanted to do, right? So after I figured out what I wanted to do, it was weird. For some reason, I was like, I'm going to business school. I don't know why I was saying this, but I was studying for the GMAT and doing all this stuff. As like, I feel like as like super young people do when they're trying to figure out what to do next. That was my plan to go to business school. And then I remember taking the GMAT and it was like the worst experience. I was like, I hate the GMAT. I knew I was I was going to quit my job and like go to grad school. I was like, I hate the GMAT. And I was hanging out with my friend. It was like her bachelorette party. She's like, well, why are you going to business school? And I like could not answer her. I was like, it was like this weird thing. I was like, why am I going to business school? It's like, she's like, it's some other school. I was like, that's true. So I don't know. It's so funny. It's like, basically I spent all this time studying for this test, but that one comment was like, why the hell am I could not answer.
Yeah, like this doesn't make any sense for me.
So I started looking at other types of schools. I was like, oh yeah, I can go to like, I can get like, I can refocus on nonprofit and do like nonprofit management and stuff like that. So I started looking at programs and that's what I did. I did a program and I started working in nonprofit. And actually, oddly, the story connects as to how I got in comedy also. It's like the weirdest thing. It's the weirdest thing.
Interesting. It is an interesting thought though. It's like sometimes we're so conditioned to be like, well, I don't know what I want to do. Let me go back to school.
Yeah.
And business school and spend 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, right? It's like a large versus you could say, okay, let me go, to some philanthropic school or something about this. And maybe it's a couple $1,000, right? One, it's massively cheaper. Two, it's actually something that would excite you, right?
Yeah.
And so fill us in. You've poked at comedy. Obviously, that's what you do. You've poked a few times and saying you accidentally stumbled into this. So like fill us in now on the full story of how do you go from all these different things to spiritual health to, going in philanthropy to all of a sudden kind of randomly finding yourself in your true element, which was comedy.
Yeah, so definitely going to school and studying nonprofit management was the best decision for me. But after I finished the program I went through, I was just bored. Like I wanted to do something else after work. Like I guess I'm the type of person that like, goes off on weekends with strange women and do like holistic health things. Like I want something to do. So at the time, I work. So I actually still in the day, like I still I work in philanthropy and we write a lot. So I wanted to take a writing class, do a more humorous writing class. Cause like my coworkers are always laughing at me. People just laugh at me. That's all they do all day. It's been like that my whole life. I was like, well, I can take some of this and put it in my writing. So I was looking for like a humor writing class, but it was sold out, and they only had the stand-up writing class. And I was like, well, I don't want to be a stand-up. Like, I'm not doing that. Like,
Yeah.
I'll do it, but I'm not doing these. You have to like do the show at the end. I was like, I'm definitely not going to do the show at the end.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, right. Kind of thing. And then the teacher was like, you have to do the show. Like, it's a part.
Yeah. Like you're not getting out of it.
Yeah, he was like, this is a part, sorry, like you have to do the show. So I did the show, and it was like the weirdest thing. Something just clicked. I was like, oh, this is it. Like, okay, I love philanthropy, but comedy, like, whoa, you just totally took my attention. This is like, okay, like this is the shit now. So for me, it was like another aha moment. Where like, why are you going to business school? And like doing my first stand-up, it was like these parallel moments that really defined my life and my trajectory.
Yeah.
And I will say comedy is in line with my why. It's about helping people. It's about making them laugh. But the thing about it is, it's like right in the moment. Like I literally get high off the laughter. So it's like, feed me more. Every night I go out, do jokes, like I need more laughs. And it's like good. It feeds into my why. I don't think if I would have ever known that I like to help people, I like to make people happy, I wouldn't have known that, comedy is so much for me. Like it just kind of blends in. It's like this like weird thing. I still work in philanthropy. I love working in philanthropy.
Yeah.
I love doing comedy. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting way of like loving to help people, but you love to help people. And one of the ways you help people is through like helping them laugh.
Yeah.
Right. And the joy that brings to them. And yeah, it's a beautiful sort of combination that you have where you have the philanthropy you get to do and you love doing that in the day. And then at night, all of a sudden, your maybe coworkers are showing up at a bar and you're doing stand-up.
I don't involve them in this. I rather tell my dirty jokes to strangers. Worlds. Yeah.
That's cool. I'm curious, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned from doing stand-up?
I mean, stand-up teaches you way too much. I don't know. Only a crazy person would put themselves through this. I think.
Stand-up is no joke.
Yeah. It's just like why? So the thing about stand-up is like it really taps into my work ethic. I think that's the thing. It's one of those things where it's like the more you put into it, the more it will give you. It's like people say that a lot, but like stand-up, nothing feeds it like stand-up comedy. Like literally, if you put in work, you will naturally get better and better and better. Like I just noticed, like been doing this for a couple of years now. It's like you're constantly evolving. If you're not evolving, that's the thing about stand-up. It's like this thing where I never now I'm starting to know as I mature in my comedy, every like 6 months or so, I get this uncomfortable feeling around my comedy. And it's literally telling me your jokes have to evolve. Like you're just at another place now. And it's like almost instinctual. And like, I feel like maybe other comics feel that as well, but we all have like if you're a good comic, sorry, we all have like our growth period as it relates to our art. And like, stand up, it really, really pushes you in these places. It really, really makes you live in discomfort. Honestly, there's nothing worse than like because the audience can feel you. It's a connection you have with the audience. They can, if you don't like the material, they can feel it. And there's nothing like bombing and like what that teaches you and how you evolve from that. So stand up is constantly like pushing your boundaries and like messing with you. Honestly, it's not that rewarding, but it is.
It's those moments though that make it worth it when they do hit.
No, most definitely.
That's cool. And what makes you talk about like bombing, right? And that's a natural part of being a comedian. I'm sure you have some days where you're like crickets or like, man, this is literally like, I feel like someone stabbed me in the heart because it's so awkward up here. Like, how do you bounce back from one of those shows?
It's weird. Like everyone has their version of bombing. I just want to be clear about that. Like some people like a lot of people could not like it goes both ways. Some people could like still be laughing and the comedian feels they're bombing, or some people never get laughs and they don't feel they're bombing. So everyone has their own low, if you will. So for me, it's just like if I like lose control of the crowd or something, like I remember a few weeks ago, like the crowd was pissed because they didn't get their food. And like, it was The
And it
waiters were
fell on
coming
you.
in, talking. The people were hungry. And like, I'm over here trying to tell dick jokes. Like, this is not flying.
Yeah, give me my food, lady.
Yeah, so it's like you kind of go through these periods of like, okay, what could I have done differently? What would I do next time? Like, what happens next time? What is the strategy? Sometimes there is no strategy, but even like trying to
Yeah.
figure out like how you react to these different situations and how like every night could be this like potential learning experience. I think that is what's so rewarding about stand-up comedy, especially here in New York. I almost feel like, you're going to school again because every night is, crazy things happen in New York. So
Yeah.
every night could be a crazy experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's a learning. You're just constantly learning.
Yeah. I love it. And it is, I think there's this sense of when you do work that like enriches you, that fulfills you, that keeps you like alive in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Versus sometimes we do work and it's like you feel like a zombie, right? Or you're going
Yeah.
to something, you're like, I just feel like alive but dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think there's this sense that keeps you alive of like growing in some way, right? Like you said, it's like you're going to comedy every single night and you have to grow, right? It's like if you don't grow, you're not gonna, get called back, or you're not gonna get the laughs that you want.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a really important reminder for anybody that it's like, if you're feeling sort of like a zombie, asking yourself, are you still growing? Are you still progressing? Are you still like moving forward? And maybe one of the ways you do that is getting uncomfortable. Maybe it's not getting on a stage and going to do stand up, probably not the recommended path for most people, but asking yourself, are you growing and progressing? And one thing I would love to hear from you, because I love how you have this combination of you do philanthropy and that's, what you do in the day. And that's, kind of the 9 to 5. And then you also have stand up, and there's, the way I feel from you, so much joy you get from both of these.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious for you, like, what would you say brings you, the amount of fulfillment and joy and happiness that you get from doing the stuff you do in philanthropy?
Yeah, well, yeah. So it's interesting. Not that,
Yeah.
so I've been raising money and giving money to different programs around the country for like, a while now. And it's just something about seeing, it's the problem solving for me when it comes to philanthropy, because you get involved in like certain, like, okay, like right now, for instance, the country's going through a housing affordability crisis. Everyone thinks it's just New York and California, but actually it's coming everywhere. Someone like me in my sector, we see this and we're like, okay, how can we stop this from happening in Austin, in Houston, in Dallas, in this place? And like all these smart people coming together who really care. And like sometimes a lot of them are annoying, let's be honest, but they all care for the common mission. And there's something powerful in that. In my part, it's like, okay, how are we going to get the financing to solve this problem? Like, that's what I usually focus on. And then other people are coming up with these programs and creating these solutions. And then granted, are we going to stop the housing affordability crisis? No, but we're going to help some people along the way.
Yeah.
And those personal stories and how we kind of shape things and how we learn from that and grow as a society is very fulfilling.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel like I'm just not like just sitting on the couch, like having all these things happening. I'm trying to be an active participant in my society to kind of make things better. So like, for me, it's just like, oh, I love doing that. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
It brings
It's
me a
like
lot of joy.
it's like you're really making a difference, right? And you feel that you're making a difference in the work that you do.
Yeah.
Right. Which is powerful. And for you, I think one thing just to connect here too, is it's like you spend all that time learning about yourself and you realize that one of the things you've always been pulled towards is, right, kind of this philanthropic work that you do. And that's a way that you're making a difference. But I think for someone else listening to this, it could be, I'm passionate about rockets, right?
Yeah.
And whatever it is that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And maybe where you go make the difference is in helping us get to space, right? Or whatever it would be. But it's different for everybody. But I think there is a sense of like, what's the thing you're naturally pulled towards?
Yeah.
And then at the same time, how can you combine that with something where you feel you're truly making a difference?
Most definitely.
Right. And I definitely noticed that in my life as well. And so, Meka Mo, it's been so fun to kind of dive through your story, learn how you stumbled into comedy and all these other aspects. I'm curious if people want to see more of you, whether that's going to see you live in person, if they want to hang out with you, through the internet and all that stuff, where's the best place for people to find you and continue to hang out?
Yeah, well, you can find me. I'm on Instagram at Meka Social, Meka Social, and www.mekamocomedy.com. That's my website. I try to post my dates there. I'll actually be in San Francisco starting the 16th for about a week,
Love
performing
it.
in the Bay Area.
Let's
So
go.
I don't know if anyone's listening out there, come out and see
Yeah.
me. My schedule's on my website. But after that, I'll be back here in New York, and I will be in the New York Comedy Festival on November 13th at 7 at QED Astoria. So definitely come to that show. It's going to be
Let's go.
hilarious. I'm going to be hosting. It'll be funny, of course.
Yeah. So cool. Well, we'll put in that show notes so everybody's easy access to it. And last question I have for you, and this is a question we ask for every guest because we really do want to help people find direction, but we believe in doing it through action, right? It's like you're not just going to sit on the couch and all of a sudden, again, you snap your fingers and everything's magical, but it requires some work to really get to that next step in your life. And so I'm curious for you, like, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their next chapter?
Yeah, I think honestly, a writing exercise, like a free writing exercise, that always helps me. I love writing down my thoughts of like what I want to do. And like, I would say just write down the first things that pop in your head. Don't be sometimes you're writing things like you're so self-conscious about it. Like, no, like, what
Yeah.
is your wildest dream? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not supposed to be a stand-up comedian. Like, what is going like, what is happening
Yeah.
right now? So what is that wildest dream? Like, what do you just want to do and like see what happens?
I love it. So the prompt journal, what's your wildest dream? And what would two other questions be that our listener could say, you know what, I'm gonna journal about what's my wildest dream. What would you say would be two other maybe prompts that you enjoy that people could get some growth from?
Yeah, what are you naturally good at? Like what just comes, everyone has their thing I can't count. Like I'm not gonna be an accountant. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's talk
Yeah.
about your natural so like, what are you naturally good at? And then what do you like to do? Because I think those things are different. Like just because I decided I want to do stand-up comedy doesn't mean I was good at it. So like,
Yeah.
what do you like to do? Like, what can
Yeah.
what would you like to do? Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I love all of those. Thank you again, Meka Mo, so much for coming on. It's been fun to dive through your story. I hopefully will make it to one of your shows one day. So thank you so much for being here and massively appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Stu.
Absolutely.